My daughter told me not to come to Thanksgiving dinner because, in her words, I would make things awkward for her clients. So I sat alone in my house in Kingston with a plate of reheated soup and the television on mute. But at exactly 11:58 that night, my son called. His voice was barely a whisper. "Dad, something is happening. You need to turn on the news." My daughter screamed through the phone the next morning. "You destroyed everything we built. I'm calling our lawyers." I had spent 3 years being quiet, being patient, being grateful for whatever scraps of family they offered me. I was done being quiet. Quick question before we go any further. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments below, because what happened to me in the months that followed that Thanksgiving dinner, I need to know this is reaching the people who need to hear it. My name is Arthur Mackenzie. I am 67 years old, and I live in a century-old house on the edge of Kingston, Ontario, with a workshop in the back that smells like cedar and linseed oil, and 40 years of careful work. 3 days before Thanksgiving, my daughter called. She had that particular tone she uses when she's already made up her mind and is simply informing you of the decision. "Dad," she said, "we're keeping dinner small this year. Industry people, investors, a few designers from Toronto. It's really more of a brand event than a family thing. I know you'd be more comfortable at home. I was 67 years old. I had built furniture by hand since I was 22. I had calloused palms and sawdust permanently embedded in the lines of my knuckles. And my daughter was telling me, with that smooth, practiced kindness, that I was an embarrassment. "I understand," I said. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. "Thanks, Dad. I knew you'd get it. We'll do something in November. Just us." She hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, looking at the calendar on the wall. The third Monday of October. The light outside had gone that particular copper color that Ontario gets in the fall, when the maples along the street go orange, and the air smells like wood smoke and coming cold. Margaret used to love that light. She used to stand at the kitchen window with her tea and say, "Arthur, don't you dare spend this whole afternoon in the shop. Come and sit with me." I hadn't been able to look at that window the same way in 3 years. To understand how I arrived at that kitchen on Thanksgiving, alone, eating soup I hadn't made, you need to go back. You need to understand what this family was before Margaret died. We met at Queen's University in 1979. She was studying literature. I was in engineering. Though my real love was always wood. The way a piece of quarter-sawn oak could look like water if you caught the grain right. The way hand-cut dovetails held together without a single piece of metal. Pure geometry and friction and patience. Margaret understood that. She was the one who encouraged me to take the evening woodworking courses, who cleared out the garden shed so I could have space to work, who told me, 17 years into my engineering career, that I was spending 40 hours a week doing what paid me and not a single honest hour doing what made me. I built her a rocking chair for our 20th anniversary. She cried when she saw it. Walnut with hand-carved details along the armrests, the joints cut so precisely you could hardly see the seams. She kept it in the bedroom until the day she died, and I have not moved it since. My daughter Renee was born in 1986, my son Derek in 1988. They grew up with sawdust on the kitchen floor and the smell of finish in the garage, and a father who read furniture catalogs the way other men read sports pages. Renee was always the ambitious one. By 35, she had moved to Toronto, built a life in the design world, had a son of her own, my grandson Oliver, who was born with Margaret's eyes and the kind of solemn curiosity that made him watch everything twice before he touched it. Before Margaret got sick, Sundays meant something. Renee would drive up from Toronto, Derek from Ottawa, and we'd sit around the table until 10 at night arguing about nothing important. Oliver would fall asleep on the couch, and I'd carry him to the spare room and stand there for a moment looking at him, this small, warm weight in my arms, and feel like everything in my life had amounted to something worthwhile. Margaret had a stroke in November. She was gone by February, 61 years old. Oliver was 4. He didn't fully understand, but he knew something essential had left the house, the way children always know. In the months that followed, the calls from Renee and Derek came less frequently. Grief pulls people inward. I understood that. But slowly, something else began to happen. Renee stopped asking my opinion at family dinners. Derek started answering for me when I'd barely finished a sentence. At a birthday dinner for Renee in the spring, she introduced me to her investors as my father. He's been in the trades. 40 years of original design work. The trades. What I had been doing in my workshop for the past decade was not hobby carpentry. I had developed what I called the Mackenzie joinery method, a system of interlocking cuts that allowed large furniture pieces to be assembled and disassembled without hardware, maintaining structural integrity that matched or exceeded traditional mortise and tenon construction. I had also developed a line of original furniture designs built around this method. Clean, functional, with a Scandinavian influence filtered through Canadian materials. White ash, black walnut, locally sourced maple. I had registered the designs with the Canadian Intellectual Property Office in 2019. Margaret had pushed me to do it. "You've spent 20 years on this," she said. "Stop being humble about it." So I filed. Every joint diagram, every design blueprint, every dimensional specification. All of it officially registered, time-stamped. Mine. When Margaret died, those files sat in a drawer in my workshop. I wasn't thinking about intellectual property. I was thinking about how to remember to eat lunch. Renee had started her business, Renfield Design Co., in 2021. She sold premium custom furniture to clients in Toronto, mostly Rosedale and Forest Hill, people renovating century homes who wanted something that looked handmade without actually having to deal with the inconvenience of a craftsman. When she launched, she called me. "Dad, I'd love your input on some pieces. Your eye for proportion is incredible." She visited the workshop twice in the spring. I showed her everything: the joint geometry, the material selections, the design logic behind each piece. I was glad to be useful. I thought we were building something together. I had no idea what I was actually doing. The first sign came in September of 2022. A client of mine, a retired professor in Kingston who had bought a dining set from me years earlier, sent me a photograph. He had seen a piece at a design show in Toronto. "Arthur," he wrote, "this looks exactly like your table. The proportions, the joinery, even the way the legs taper." The piece was listed under Renfield Design Co. Price tag, $11,000. My design, my joint method, Renee's name on the label. I told myself it was influence, not theft. Designers borrow from each other. I had influenced her. That's what fathers do. Then a woman named Patricia Ahusu reached out. She was a furniture retailer in Ottawa who had seen Renfield's booth at a trade show. "Mr. Mackenzie," she wrote, "I've been following your work for years. I was quite surprised to see your Montrose sideboard presented as an original Renfield piece. I thought you should know it's been pitched to 3 independent retailers in Ontario as their proprietary design. Are you aware of this?" I sat at my workbench and read that email 4 times. That afternoon I called an IP lawyer, James Whitmore, out of Ottawa. I'd been referred to him years ago when I first registered the designs. I told him what I'd found. He listened without interrupting. Then he said, "Arthur, forward me everything. The CIPO registration, the photographs, the emails from the retailer. Forward me everything tonight." I did. 3 days later, James called back. "Your registrations predate any of Renfield's public filings by at least 2 years. Every piece we've seen photographs of is derivative of your documented designs. This is not influence. This is direct reproduction. We have a very strong case." Then he said something that stayed with me. "I know this is your daughter, but silence doesn't protect family. It just protects whoever is doing the harm." I wasn't ready to act. Not yet. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. So I called Renee. She picked up on the second ring. Her voice was warm and easy. "Dad, hi, what's up?" I told her what Patricia had sent me. I kept my voice steady. I asked her to explain. Silence. Then, "Dad, design inspiration isn't the same as copying. You showed me your process. I learned from you. That's how the industry works. Renee, these are my registered designs." Her tone shifted. "Not sharp yet. More careful. You registered some sketches years ago. That's not the same as owning a design language. Designers evolve from influences. That's not theft. That's craft." "I have the CIPO filings," I said. "Then we should talk to lawyers about what those filings actually mean." She paused. "I don't want this to become a thing, Dad. We're family. I hung up and sat in the workshop for a long time. My phone had been on the table, recording. Ontario is a one-party consent province. I hadn't planned it. I'd simply forgotten to put it away before the call. I drove to Ottawa the following week and sat across from James with 2 binders of documentation. My CIPO registrations, photographs from the trade show, Patricia's emails, side-by-side comparisons of my original blueprints against Renfield's current catalog, the Montrose sideboard, the Heron coffee table, the Bellrock bookcase, 7 distinct pieces, all mine, all now selling under her name at prices between $6,000 and $15,000 CAD. James looked at everything, closed the binders, leaned back. He said, "This is airtight," but I didn't file anything. Not then, because in October, Derek called. He'd heard from Renee. "Dad, come on," he said. "You know how hard she's worked to build this. You want to be the reason it falls apart? She's your daughter. She has Oliver to think about." There it was. Oliver, the name they always reached for. I asked Derek directly, "Did you know what she was doing?" Long pause. "I knew she was inspired by your work. She's always looked up to you." That's not what I asked. "Dad, we're family." I let it go. For another year, I let it go. I watched Renfield's Instagram grow to 40,000 followers. I watched the Globe and Mail run a design feature on Renee under the headline, "The New Face of Canadian Craft." I watched her accept a Made in Canada Design Award at a ceremony in Toronto while my workshop sat 2 hours away in Kingston. That November, she didn't invite me to Thanksgiving. Too many industry people. I'd be more comfortable at home. I sat in the workshop that evening and looked at the wall where I'd pinned Margaret's photograph from the summer of 2017, the one from our anniversary trip to Cape Breton. She was standing on the Cabot Trail with her hair going sideways in the wind, laughing at something I'd said. I couldn't remember what anymore. "You would know what to do," I told her. "I never do." I picked up the phone and called James. I said, "Tell me how to start." We filed in December. Not a lawsuit yet. A formal CIPO challenge and a cease and desist, sent directly to Renfield Design Co., registered mail, with a copy forwarded to Renee's personal address. James also reached out to a journalist at the Globe and Mail, a woman named Claire Beausoleil, who had been investigating a pattern of small independent craft designers having their work reproduced by mid-scale design brands. Our case was the largest documented example she'd found. Claire met me at a Tim Hortons off Division Street in Kingston on a Thursday morning in January. She had a laptop and a recorder, and she spent 3 hours going through every document. When she looked up, she said, "Mr. Mackenzie, this is going to be a significant piece. I'd like to publish in late February. I want to make sure your documentation is presented completely." I nodded. She looked at me steadily. "Once this is out, it can't be undone. Your daughter's business will not recover from this the way it is currently structured. You understand that?" "She built it on my work," I said. "I didn't build it on hers." Claire published on February 14th. Valentine's Day. I don't know if she chose that date deliberately, but before that happened, there was Christmas. Derek told me on the 12th of December, a text, not a call. "Keeping it small this year. Kids' schedules are crazy. Let's plan something in January." He and Renee had been doing something in January for the past 2 years that never happened. I spent Christmas Eve in the workshop. Not out of sadness, though there was sadness, but because there was a commissioned piece I was finishing, a cradle for a family in Napanee, and the work settled me the way it always had. The smell of fresh walnut shavings, the sound of the hand plane, the way a good cut just gives, no resistance, like the wood was always waiting for you to find that line. On Christmas morning, a card arrived. Oliver had addressed it himself, the letters enormous and careful, the way children write when they're concentrating. Inside was a drawing, 2 figures at a workbench, one tall and one small. "Grandpa's shop," it said at the top in his handwriting. There was a yellow dog in the corner, though we have no dog, which made me smile. He'd drawn it in October. I could tell from the orange tree in the background. He'd been sitting on it for 2 months waiting to send it. I taped it to the workshop wall with the others. Renee had stopped bringing him by in the summer. When I asked, she said he was busy with school, with his father's family, with activities. "He's a kid, Dad. His schedule is full." I understood that children were busy. What I didn't understand was why, for 8 months, His schedule had been full every single weekend without exception. But he found ways, cards, the occasional drawing tucked inside an envelope with no return address, as if he knew they might be intercepted. He had Margaret's eyes and her particular quality of quiet loyalty, the kind that doesn't announce itself but simply keeps showing up. February 13th. James called in the afternoon. The Globe and Mail piece is running tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Eastern. He paused. Arthur, your CIPO challenge has also been formally acknowledged. If Renfield doesn't reach a licensing agreement with you within 60 days, we proceed to federal court. I thanked him and sat with the phone in my lap. That evening I drove past the workshop and went for a walk instead, down to the waterfront. Lake Ontario dark and enormous in the February cold. The ice pushed up in ridges along the shore. The city quiet the way Kingston gets in winter. The stone buildings holding the cold. The lights on Earl Street amber in the dark. I thought about Renee at 5 years old, asleep in the car on the way back from camping at the Rideau Lakes, her face perfectly peaceful, her hand curled open on the seat. I thought about Derek teaching himself to skate in the driveway by holding onto a plastic chair and refusing to let me help. I thought about Margaret saying, "You have a gift, Arthur. Stop keeping it to yourself." I had kept it to myself for 3 years, kept quiet while my designs sold under my daughter's name, kept quiet while she built a reputation on my 40 years of work, kept quiet because I was afraid that speaking would cost me whatever was left of my family, not knowing that the silence was costing me the same thing, just more slowly and without the truth. I walked home, sat at the kitchen table. My laptop was open, the Globe and Mail's draft confirmation link still on the screen. One email to Claire. Stop! And it would hold. I looked at the wall. There was one of Oliver's drawings stuck there with a magnet, 3 figures in a boat. He'd labeled them Grandpa and Oliver and a fish. The fish was larger than either of us. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go. Then I thought of Oliver. Grandpa. Small voice. Cautious. Oliver. I sat up. Hey, buddy. I'm at Aunt Sophie's. He was whispering the way he does when he doesn't want adults to hear. She let me use her phone. I wanted to say Happy Valentine's Day. Mom doesn't know. Happy Valentine's Day, I said. My throat tightened. I made you something. A card. It has a woodpecker on it because you like birds. Mom said we're too busy this weekend, but I'm going to mail it on Monday when she's at yoga. That sounds perfect, I said. I can't wait to see it. A pause. There was adult laughter somewhere in the background. Glasses clinking. Music. Grandpa, are you okay? I'm okay, buddy. I'm really glad you called. Miss Sophie says I have to give the phone back. His voice got quieter. But I miss going to your shop. Can we do that sometime? Yeah, I said. Yeah, we're going to do that. Okay. He exhaled like something had been settled. Bye, Grandpa. Love you. Love you too, kid. The line went quiet. I sat there for a long time. Then I opened my email and typed 2 words to Claire. Run it. I closed the laptop, went to bed, did not sleep until almost 3 in the morning, and when I did, I dreamed of the Cabot Trail. At 6 a.m., my phone began. The Globe and Mail piece ran above the fold on their digital front page. Who really designs Canadian craft? The subheadline, How a Kingston master craftsman's registered designs ended up in a Toronto showroom under his daughter's name. Claire had been meticulous. Every CIPO registration number, the timeline, the side-by-side blueprints and photographs, Patricia Ahausu's retailer account, James's legal analysis, and the recording of Renee's voice, clearly reproduced with consent, saying, "You showed me your process. I learned from you. That's how the industry works." By 7 a.m., I had 42 missed calls. By 9, over 200 text messages. I answered none of them. At 9:15, Derek called 3 times in a row. I let it go to voicemail. At 10, Renee called. I picked up. Her voice was raw. She'd been crying or hadn't stopped crying since 6. I could hear it in the spaces between words. Dad, do you have any idea what you've done? I kept my voice even. I told the truth, Renee. I gave you 3 years to do it yourself. We're finished. Everything I built. She stopped. Started again. The orders are being canceled. 2 retailers called this morning. The Made in Canada people sent an email. Their committee is reviewing. She was breathing hard. Do you understand what you've taken from Oliver? That stopped me for a moment, because she knew it would. What I took from Oliver, I said carefully, was not the same as what you took from me. She hung up. Derek's voicemail said, I hope you're satisfied. The Globe and Mail piece was shared 40,000 times by noon. By evening, it had been picked up by CBC Arts, by Blog.to, by design trade publications in Toronto and Montreal. The comments ranged from furious to devastated to thoughtful in roughly equal measure. People were choosing sides in real time. Some were vicious in both directions. I turned the phone over and went into the workshop. I planed a piece of ash for 2 hours. That's the best I could do that day. Renfield Design Co. issued a statement on February 16th through a PR agency. It was careful, corporate, legalistic. Renfield has always credited the collaborative craft traditions that inform our work. We take intellectual property concerns seriously and are currently engaged in dialogue with the appropriate parties. It did not mention my name. It did not mention the CIPO registrations. It did not say sorry. The Globe and Mail ran a follow-up 3 days later. Claire had found 2 additional designers who had approached Renfield at trade shows and later found their concepts reproduced in the catalog. My case was no longer isolated. It was part of a pattern. February 22nd. The Made in Canada Design Council suspended Renfield's certification pending review. February 25th. A boutique showroom in Yorkville, Toronto, which had been Renfield's primary retail partner, removed the collection from their floor. I had wanted truth and accountability. I had not wanted an industry unraveling. I had not wanted the 4 employees who worked for Renfield's small studio in Liberty Village, people who had nothing to do with any of this, to come to work on a Monday and find the orders canceled. A woman named Jess, a young furniture finisher, sent me a message through the CIPO challenge filing. She'd found my email from the documents. Mr. Mackenzie, she wrote, I want you to know I understand why you did this. I've seen things in the last year that bothered me, but I also have a lease coming up in April and I'm scared. I just wanted to say I'm not angry at you. I wrote her back the same evening. I gave her the name of a Kingston cabinet shop that was expanding. I told her I would write her a reference personally. I told her I was sorry this had landed on her. Sorry was insufficient, but it was what I had. March 3rd. My phone lit up at 2 a.m. Renee, I stared at it for a long count, then answered. Her voice was different. Not the crying through anger of the first call. Something quieter, more tired. She said, Dad, can we talk? We're talking. I mean really talk. She exhaled. James called Derek last week about a licensing settlement. Derek told me. I know. If I agree to the licensing terms, she said carefully, my name stays on the business, but the designs are credited to you. The Made in Canada certification can be restored. The business can survive. Smaller, but alive. That's the arrangement James proposed. Yes, I know. She stopped. Dad, why didn't you just come to me? In the beginning, why didn't you just say something? I almost laughed. I called you, Renee. In September of 2022. I told you directly what I'd found. I have the recording. I know. She was quiet. I was so sure I could make it work. I told myself it was inspiration. I told myself you didn't really want to commercialize the designs. That you were a craftsman, not a businessman. That you'd be happy knowing the work was out in the world. She paused. I told myself a lot of things that I knew weren't true. I listened. You're my father, she said. And I treated you like a resource I'd already used. I closed my eyes. You disappeared me, I said. Not just the designs. The Christmas dinners. Thanksgiving. Oliver. You made me invisible in my own family, Renee. And you used my grandson to leverage my silence. I know. I know. Her voice broke. I don't know how to fix it. You signed the licensing agreement, I said. You credit the designs publicly and correctly. And you stop deciding when Oliver is allowed to see me. Silence. All of it, she said. All of it. Another long silence. Then, okay. We did not say I love you. We did not say everything is fine. She said okay, and we hung up, and I sat in the dark kitchen, holding the phone with both hands until my tea went cold. 2 weeks later, Renee posted on her professional accounts. She'd written it herself, No PR language, no passive constructions. Just direct sentences. The furniture designs that built Renfield Design Co. were developed and registered by my father, Arthur Mackenzie, of Kingston, Ontario. I used them without proper credit or compensation. That was wrong. We are now operating under a formal licensing agreement, and his name will appear alongside every piece going forward. I take full responsibility for what I did and what it cost him. The comments were a mix. Too little, too late. At least she's saying it. Brave or calculated? You decide. I hope your father forgives you. I hope your father doesn't. I read every one. Then I closed the laptop and went into the workshop and started on a new piece. A rocking chair. White oak, hand-cut joinery, the same dimensions as the one I'd made Margaret, though nothing would ever be quite the same as that one. That was March. By May, things had shifted. The licensing agreement brought stability back to Renfield, though it was a different business now. Smaller, more honest. Jess, the furniture finisher, had gotten the Kingston job. She sent me a message. Started Monday. Thank you. In June, James finalized a separate agreement with 2 other designers through the same process. Claire Beausoleil's follow-up series ran in 4 parts and won a National Magazine Award citation that fall. Patricia Ahusu from Ottawa sent flowers to the workshop. A card with them said, "You made the industry a little more honest. Thank you." My own work had been noticed now in ways it hadn't been before. A design school in Toronto asked me to give a guest lecture on traditional joinery methods. A craft gallery in Ottawa wanted to mount a small exhibition. I said yes to both, not because I needed the recognition, because Margaret had told me to stop keeping it to myself, and I'd wasted too many years being humble about the wrong things. The summer brought something I hadn't expected. Oliver started coming to the workshop on Saturday mornings. Renee drove him up from Toronto, dropped him off, and drove away. She didn't come in, and I didn't ask her to. Not yet. That would take longer, and there was no point pretending otherwise. But Oliver walked through the workshop door the first morning like he owned the place, went straight to the workbench, picked up a hand plane, and said, "How does this work?" And we were fine. He was 8 by then, more serious than before, quieter in the way children get when they've been watching adults be complicated at each other. But in the workshop, he was just Oliver. He wanted to know why the grain goes in different directions in different boards. He wanted to know if wood feels pain when you cut it. He wanted to know if Margaret had been as good at this as me. Better, I told him. She had better patience. He thought about this. Then he said, "I'm going to be better than both of you." "Good," I said. "I'm counting on it." December 31st, the following year. 1 year after the Globe and Mail piece. I was not at a party in Toronto. I was not sitting alone in the dark, wondering whether to push a button that would change everything. I was in the workshop, and it was full. James was there, and Claire, and Patricia, who had driven down from Ottawa and brought wine I didn't have the right glasses for. My old friend Bill McGregor, who had known me since before Margaret, who had driven from Belleville through the first of the season's real snow and arrived with ice in his beard and a bottle of rye. Derek had come too, quietly, a week after Renee's statement, with no announcement and no speech. He just showed up at the workshop door, looked at me, and said, "I should have called sooner." I let him in. That was enough for now. At 11:50, Bill raised his glass. He looked around the workshop, the tools on their hooks, the Cradle Abigail's drawings hanging on the wall, Oliver's fishboat drawing still pinned between 2 clamps. "To the work," he said, and the man who kept doing it, even when they told him it didn't matter. "To the work," I said. At 12:14, my phone buzzed. A FaceTime request. The caller ID said, "My grandson." I looked up. Everyone was watching. "He sent a video call," I said. Claire smiled. "Answer it, Arthur." I stepped into the corner of the workshop, pressed accept. The screen connected. Oliver was in his pajamas, his hair standing sideways, holding a piece of paper. Behind him, I could just see Renee at the kitchen table, not looking at the camera, giving him the moment. "Hi, Grandpa." He held up the paper. "I made you a card. It's the workshop. See?" He pointed to the tiny crayon workbench, the tiny crayon figure bent over it. "That's you. And that's me on the stool. I made the stool too big, but I ran out of room." "It's perfect," I said. He looked at me seriously through the screen. Next Saturday, can we make something? I want to try the hand plane again. Yeah, I said, my voice not quite steady. Next Saturday, we're going to try the hand plane. He nodded like this resolved something important. Okay. Happy New Year, Grandpa. Love you. Love you, kid. Get some sleep. He grinned, and the screen went dark. I stood there in the corner of the workshop for a moment before I turned around. Looking back now, I want to be clear about what this year cost me and what it didn't. I lost 3 years. I can't recover. 3 Christmases, 2 Thanksgivings, 8 months without seeing my grandson. I will never get those back. Renee and I are rebuilding something, but it is not the same thing that was there before, and I think it would be dishonest to pretend it will be. Some damage holds its shape even after you've repaired it. But here's what I know. The first thing, document everything. I registered my designs in 2019 because Margaret told me to, and I nearly didn't. I thought it was presumptuous. I thought it meant claiming something. And I had been taught by 40 years of Canadian modesty that claiming things was for other people. File the paperwork, save the emails, record what needs to be recorded. Not because you plan to fight anyone, because the truth needs a paper trail, or it's just your word against someone who has more to gain from the lie than you do. The second thing, speak earlier. I knew in September of 2022 what was happening. I waited 16 months to act because I was afraid of what speaking would cost me. What I didn't understand was that silence had a cost too, paid in stolen sleep and disappeared dinners and a grandson I wasn't allowed to see. Silence doesn't keep peace. It just decides who has to pay for the peace and who gets to enjoy it. The third thing, you are not obsolete. I was told, by the way my daughter moved me to the edges of her life, that 67 meant finished, that 40 years of craft was historical, not relevant, that I was someone to refer to warmly in bio lines and ignore in practice. I am here to tell you that is a lie they tell people who have something they want. Don't believe it. Your experience is not a liability. Your decades are not a burden. Your contributions did not expire. I don't know your story. I don't know if you've been pushed to the edges of your own family or your own work or your own sense of yourself. But I know the comment section on this video will be full of people who do. People who have eaten soup alone at Thanksgiving. People who have watched their ideas carry someone else's name. People who have been gently, kindly, systematically told they don't quite fit anymore. Have you ever had to choose between family peace and your own truth? Have you been made to feel invisible by the people who should see you most clearly? Tell me in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. Share this with someone who needs it. And if you're not subscribed yet, we put out new stories every week, true stories, about what it costs to stay quiet and what it costs to speak, and why both answers are harder than anyone tells you. Your voice is not a burden. Use it.